Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Ecclesiastical Law Society bite-size seminar. We're discussing what is an archdeacon, and our very own regular Moira Astin, who is herself an archdeacon, is here and is going to be answering my questions on this. And I'm particularly excited about this topic because I am at the moment acting archdeacon of Chichester, and I've been doing that just for a few weeks, been asked to stand in during the vacancy. So it's an ideal opportunity for me to find out what I should be doing. So, Moira, it's great to have you talking on, as it were, your specialist subject at Bite Size this evening. Before we talk about archdeacons generally, how long have you been an archdeacon?
8.5 years now. So Archdeacon of Reigate, it's the sheepy bit of Southwark Diocese. A lot of people don't realise that there's a rural part to Southwark. We go all the way down to Gatwick Airport, which isn't rural, but there's a bit of fields between that and Croydon. And so it's all that bit plus Sutton.
Fantastic. So before we get into all the details of what archdeacons do nowadays, how long have we had, or when did archdeacons first appear? What's the history? When did it all start?
Well, we don't really know for sure, but a few years ago I was on holiday in Ukraine. Yes, Ukraine. It was between the first Russian incursion and the full-out war we have now. It was 2016. We went because they'd won the Eurovision Song Contest. I'm sure you decide where you go on all sorts of other reasons, but on our occasion, that was why. And we were at St. Sophia's Cathedral, and we saw this mosaic. This mosaic is Lawrence, who was a deacon in the Church of Rome. And as you can see there, he was the treasurer, and he's holding the treasure box of the church. And underneath, the caption said, Archdeacon Lawrence. And this drew our eyes partly because at the time I was the vicar of St Lawrence Church in Frodingham. Sounds like a lovely village. It's actually the town centre church of Scunthorpe. It used to be a lovely village a millennium ago. And I was about to go off to be an archdeacon. And so this mosaic is kind of special to me because it was bringing together where I was as a parish priest and where I was about to go. Lawrence was the leading archdeacon, for that's all that archdeacon means, is leading archdeacon or ruling deacon in the church in Rome in the 250s. And during the persecution under Valerian, he was challenged by the governor of Rome to hand over the wealth of the church. Lawrence asked for 3 days to gather the wealth and used those 3 days to give it away, and then brought the poorest people who could find in the church to present to the governor, and said to the governor, these are the wealth of the church. It shows you several things about archdeacons. One is we do like to be a bit of a smart ass, but if you'll excuse my French, the chance to be smart really suits us. But it shows that it's that intersection of spirituality, the poor are the wealth of the church, and the practical. He was dealing with the money and how the money was looked after. And here we are, about 17 and a half centuries later, and the role is still the practical and the spiritual.
Fantastic. Though one thing that's changed, hasn't it? Although Lawrence himself was a deacon and not a priest, archdeacons in the Church of England, at least, are always priests, aren't
Yeah,
they?
that's what the canons say. We have to be priests. So for practical reasons, it helps because when I get invited to a church to lead worship, I'm usually there when the priest isn't. I cover vacancies, I cover holidays. Whereas if the bishop comes, although they sometimes go for vacancies, they very rarely just cover someone's holiday. If the bishop turns up, it's a big event and the priest is always there. For me, it's practical. I'm alongside the people, I'm leading worship for them. It really helps that I'm a priest, and the Church of England inherited that from being the church in England historically.
Sure.
It has kept to that.
So that's what you often do on a Sunday by the sounds of it. But what else do archdeacons do?
Well, this is the Ecclesiastical Law Society, so let's look at the canons. And the key canon that is relevant is Canon C22 of archdeacons, and that outlines the role today. Item 4 says, by the way, the canons are not inclusive, even though archdeacons could be either male or female, but this is what it says. Every archdeacon shall within his archdeaconry carry out his duties under the bishop, and shall assist the bishop in his pastoral care and office, and particularly he shall see that all such as hold any ecclesiastical office within the same perform their duties with diligence, and shall bring to the bishop's attention what calls for correction or merits praise. And that's the heart of what we do. Sometimes archdeacons say we really do the bishop's job for them, almost complaining, but actually that's what it says we're for. We're to assist the bishop in pastoral care, caring for the clergy and the people. So to do that, we need to know the clergy and the churches. And that's one of the reasons why on Sunday I will be in a different church every week, getting to know my patch. It also involves drawing to the bishop's attention. Now, usually, if something's come to my attention, I will let the bishop know about it, but will then also be trying to do something about it, because the bishop actually usually wants me to assist in solving the problem. My role is to assist. So I'll tend to come to the bishop, this is happening, this is my suggestion, and the bishop will usually say, great, get on with it.
Absolutely. And when people talk about archdeacons, as you say, especially in the Ecclesiastical Law Society, they sometimes talk about archdeacons' jurisdiction, or they even say the archdeacon's ordinary jurisdiction. What on earth is that?
Yeah, ordinary jurisdiction is a concept which applies to both diocesan bishops and to archdeacons. Canon C22.2, every archdeacon within his archdeaconry exercises the jurisdiction which he has therein as an ordinary jurisdiction. Basically, it means in my archdeaconry, I have the right to do archdeacon stuff. I may do archdeacon stuff in other archdeaconries, but I don't have the right. So, for example, I was involved in something in Croydon Archdeaconry, which involved doing quite significant archdeacon stuff, because we had All Saints Spring Park, where we needed to make some provision for the future because the PCC was putting it bluntly bust. And so actually, because it was a long-term thing I was going to have to do, I was appointed an assistant archdeacon with formal delegated ability to do things, because I could not have done it by right otherwise. Whereas in the Reigate Archdeaconry, all the things to do with that I could have gone and done because I have ordinary jurisdiction. People like suffragan bishops don't have ordinary jurisdiction. And so there's curious position where we both assist the bishop, but because we're the historic post, there are certain things that it has to be us. So, for example, when we come to licensing clergy, I can have delegated to me, I can be the commissary for the purpose from the diocesan, but he can't delegate to the suffragan the things that are mine, which are installing the priest. This actually hits the road in the situation where we have alternative episcopal oversight. And so, for example, at ordinations of clergy who are being ordained by someone other than the diocesan, the canons say that it has to be the archdeacon or other people, but the archdeacon comes first, who says that the people have been suitably prepared. Therefore, in my archdeaconry, I have the right to be there to do that. And it does mean that in some ways on those occasions, I'm being there symbolising the diocese, making sure that even if there's a certain sense of pick your own bishop, you can't pick your own archdeacon.
And how about buildings, Moira? Because archdeacons have quite a lot to do with church buildings, don't they?
Yes, there are. And if you read Canon C22, item 5, every archdeacon shall within his archdeaconry hold yearly visitations, ... He shall also survey in person or by deputy all churches, etc., exercise the powers conferred on him by sections 45 to 47 of Ecclesiastical Jurisdiction and Care of Churches measure, and receiving directions of the bishop, induct any priest who has been instituted to a benefit into possession of the temporalities of the same. So there's several things there, but this is the core of what we do to do with buildings. So we have an annual visitation service. Now, people get very confused. That doesn't mean we inspect every building every year. The visitation service is the service when we actually call people to us and we swear in the church wardens. So occasionally we'll delegate that to the registrar on our behalf, but on behalf of the bishop, it's the archdeacon who does that. The next thing we need to do is to survey in person or by deputy all churches. Now that's split into two aspects. There's one which is the quinquennial inspections, which is covered by other legislation, and that's done by someone who actually knows something about buildings. But there still stays with the archdeacon the duty to look at inventories and terriers. That's covered by Canon F17. And we either do that ourselves or delegate that to a rural dean, and that has to happen every 3 years. There are dioceses that have stopped doing that, but it's there, and it's there for a purpose. By going to every church at least every 3 years, we not only help the wardens to keep on top of their paperwork, but we also get to see if certain things have happened. So you go to a church and, where are the communion rails? They used to be there. Oh, during the pandemic, we put them in the shed. You didn't have a faculty for putting them in the shed, so perhaps you should get them out of the shed and apply for the faculty. Finally, we induct priests into the possession of the temporalities of the benefice. They're the earthly things. And the earthly things include things like the building. A priest owns the building, not in their own right, but as a sole member of a corporation which owns the building. It's called incorporation sole. They also own the parsonage in the same way. So they can't sell it and put the money into their own pocket, but it does mean that there are certain things whereby it's the priest who owns the building. It's interesting because it's the church wardens who have the formal ownership of the stuff in it. And this is another situation where you have those classical Church of England checks and balances. Church wardens can't have a service without the priest because they can't go in without the priest giving them permission. But if you don't have a communion table and the communion vessels, you're not going to have much of a service either if you're having communion. So it's a both and. And then the PCC has actual responsibility for paying for repairing for the church and buying stuff. So you get that typical threeness, which we keep getting in the law when it comes to the Church of England.
So everyone has to work together.
Oh, yes.
So this Thursday, I'm going to my first DAC meeting ex officio in this diocese. What is the Archdeacon's role on the Diocesan Advisory Committee, Moira?
The Ecclesiastical Jurisdiction and Care of Churches measure 2018 covers the current constitution of DACs, and all the archdeacons of the diocese are on it. And in most dioceses, the archdeacons are expected to be able to speak for the parish. Certainly in the diocese I'm in, we get to speak first, put the case for what the parish is suggesting. If you want to know more about this, I think it's in the current issue of the journal. I wrote something about the archdeacon and the DAC because at the summer conference, I spoke about that and the importance of having someone who is a priest holding some of that understanding, holding both an understanding of the heritage, but the importance of the church being a living building.
Fantastic. Well, we're running almost to time, and we're pretty strict about keeping bite-sized to proper bite-sized portions. But I wonder if you could finish off by just saying anything about two things which I think are still to be talked about, which are key to the archdeacon's role. They would be appointments of clergy and then clergy discipline.
Yeah. I mean, formally, you can look through all the canons and all the stuff, and you won't find archdeacons when it comes to appointments. But in practice, we help that whole process. And we do that because the bishop has a role, and they usually delegate to us. So it's one of those things, assisting. So we will be there talking to parishes in advance of a vacancy, helping them prepare for their Section 11 meeting under the patronage of benefices measure, helping them think about their parish profile. All of that's practical stuff. And quite often we'll be present in the room at the interviews, not least if the bishop is the patron. In every appointment, you have a patron, the bishop, and the parish reps. If the bishop is also the patron, that threeness has got collapsed to a two-ness. And so often the bishop will have us holding either the patron role or the bishop role for them in that room. So appointments, yeah, we spend quite a lot of our time helping out with sorting about appointments. And clergy discipline, part of our role is to bring things to the attention of the bishop. The bishop, if you will, is the judge in clergy discipline. We are sometimes in the role of the complainant, particularly if it comes to a safeguarding matter, because we want to keep confidentiality of the underlying complainants. Not infrequently, it will be an archdeacon who is the formal complainant. So if you go and look at the Clergy Discipline Commission website and have a look at the tribunal decision for David Tudor, I am one of the people from the National Safeguarding Team with the formal complainants and represented them there in that tribunal.
So thank you. So as so often, the archdeacon's role is a combination both of those things which are explicitly laid down in ecclesiastical law and also those things that have grown up as a matter of custom and practice and serving the needs of the church because you're the person there who can do it, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we do is actually answering emails, answering the phone about questions, about issues. And one of the things I find interesting, I try and be really responsive on those things for two reasons. One is every question has a human being at the other end of it. And so at some level is a pastoral matter. And the other is if I'm responsive then, if there's things that really are more pastoral, they're much more likely to come to me because they have a sense I care. And so, yes, lots of low-level legal stuff we get asked, and we try and help out with that.